in accordance with Wisconsin statutes, so citizenry may be aware of the time and the place in the agenda of this meeting. I'll have a roll call.
Donna Allenstein.
Here.
Bruce Brenner.
Here.
Johanna Edwards.
Here.
Nick Gunderson.
Here.
Scott Rasmussen.
Here.
Jim Zandro is sick tonight.
Okay, thank you. We'll ask Bruce Brenner to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the agenda. Any questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Move on to, then we need a motion to approve the regular common council meeting minutes from September 23rd of 2013.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes. Any questions or comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Citizens appearance. Frank Floyd, library rep.
Thank you. First of all, with the not really bad news, but concerning news with me. If anyone knows of anyone that is good with metalwork that would be able to help us restore that engine that was on the viaduct up there, I would appreciate it. Neil and his son looked at it. It was a little too complicated for them. We took it up to the people from the Weyauwega train show, and they looked at it, and they said, if we had a place to work and we could work all winter and, a total rebuild. I don't know that we're looking for a total rebuild, but there are parts that have started to come apart, and we also need to have it bird-proof, if you know what I mean, because as my wife said, I had a 3-gallon bucket there and I filled it with stuff when I emptied everything out of the engine after it came down, so we'd like to keep that. So if you know anyone that would be able to do that kind of work, just let me know. I'll be able to contact them. We do have feelers out in 3, 4, 5 directions. Right now, I'm looking at whoever is going to do it, take the winter freeze, and then in the spring, we'll look about putting it back up once we have everything together, rather than have a rush job. But it is sorely missed. We've heard a couple of people say, hey, what happened to your train up there? So, but that's where we're at. Now, on the good news, when I give some of these reports and some of these figures, they're either coming from our own library system or they're coming from OWLS, because they also keep track of what goes on with us here. We had 545 sessions on the internet computers, and that's in the month of September, which accounts for about 15,253 minutes of computer time. Yeah, and I'm thinking, well, it is a small town. That's a lot of computer use. That's not even figuring the people that are here before we open up in the morning that are in the cars, or that are here during the afternoon or evening that are sitting outside using the computer, the internet. So we're serving, I think, a very, very good function there. The September circulation was 4,308. The circulation for September last year was 3,750. OWLS gave us a report that for the month of September this year, we grew by 14.8%. Now, if you remember a couple of meetings, I said we sort of hit that plateau and we're not really climbing up there. So this was a surprise, I think, to all of us on the board, because all of a sudden it's like, okay, what happened? Now it's starting to come alive. We also have quite a bit of use. We had 18 overdrive audiobooks out, plus 40 ebook uses during the month of September. So even though it's a library, the electronics is starting to really start coming into play. Computers, I get back to what I said to you way back when I said a lot of people don't own a computer or own a laptop and use the internet over here, but we still do get quite a bit of use on it for job search and just for computer use. So we're staying hopefully on top of it. And we'll be probably trading in, and this is more at you, I don't know if the city has any connection with where and what on computers, but we're running out of warranty on a couple of our computers this next year, so we're gonna be looking at it. There's no rush right now, so just keep us in mind. Any questions on your part? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
The citizens' appearance, we'll move on to the finance committee.
Thank you, Mike. On behalf of the Finance Committee, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of checks 29821 through 29940 totaling $189,447.37 and the monthly financial statements.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any other questions or comments? Then I'll ask for a roll call.
Edwards,
Yay, yes. Sorry.
Allenstein,
Aye.
Brunner,
Aye.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Gunderson.
Aye. Second item on our agenda, update on the streetlights on County Trunk X in the town of Weyauwega.
I do have an update. You'll remember, I believe the last motion the council made was to explore the costs or potential costs of two options that were given by the DOT. Number one was, in order to take those lights out, you had to do some type of an analysis that showed that you could still maintain minimum lighting at those intersections. The problem with that option is that the DOT said, well, not a problem, it's our problem. The city would have to pay for that, and they never really specified what that would all entail, and they still haven't. The other option was potentially you could install LED lights, and if we were going to do that, we would look at doing it through the whole city because they burn more efficiently. You could probably save the $500 per year and then some that you're looking at saving. So we looked into both of those. The problem is We Energies had told me that they do not offer LED lighting, and the state has not authorized them to offer LED lighting. So you don't have that option. Then you're back to, if you want to take the lights down, you'd have to pay for an analysis there. Like I said, the DOT has, I've been in touch with them a few times, they haven't gotten back to me yet on what's all involved. But lo and behold, in the meantime, we uncovered a City of Weyauwega Community Economic Analysis from November 1988. And if my math is right, next month is 25 years since they did this. And they have, in the middle of this report, opportunities for jobs and income and ways to spur economic advancement, development in the city. Among these, search for new businesses for the industrial park. It lays out a couple of these things here. Help businesses that are already here, look into land annexation or extraterritorial zoning. And in the middle of these recommendations, there is a recommendation, again from 1988, that says, obtain a Weyauwega Business District identification sign on Highway 10, and also light the entrance to the city from Highway 10 so that more travelers know that the city exists. So, back in 1988, there's a recommendation to light the city, and it specifically says light outside of the city limits, up to the city limits. And I don't mean to pick apart this report, but in my real quick review, that is the main opportunity that they were successful with. So they went through with that. Some of these other things are broad. How do you get new businesses here? But this one specifically says, light up the outside of the city and the entrance to the city. Now they've done that. This maybe 10, 11 years later, 1999 is when these went in. My question is, well, I'll make a statement that we're going to look into this, as next month is 25 years since they did this. I think a good review would be in order. Not here, but at the committee level, or maybe we'll do a work session, how can you update this? But the question can be asked, if this is something that they really were doing some long-range planning, put that in there, went through with it, do you want to look at taking those down? And I believe that this started because we were paying about $500 a year. I have had discussions with the town, who at one time had an agreement to pay to help offset the costs. They have not said that they would start paying again, but they seem to be unaware of an agreement. I won't name any names, to protect the innocent on that one, but there could be a possibility that if we just go back to the town again and say, hey, look, here's the agreement that you signed, maybe they'll just start paying for them. And maybe that's a side issue, but the first issue is, I think since we started, we've been talking about the lights, and I think we've probably spent a lot of time over and above the $500 up till now. And if that's something that you would like to keep looking into, the option that's left to take them down would be to do the analysis, but we have to wait for the DOT to tell us take them down or not. I would be inclined to say, well, that's one thing in the long-range plan that they went through with, and it kind of defeats the purpose, and this is just personal opinion, and if we want to look into some long-range planning, you do that hoping that people down the road will consider that. I'll leave it at that. That's an update.
What's the cost on this analysis, and what does it all entail?
We don't know yet. I called today again too, and every week I've been in touch for the last 2 months I've dropped a line. And I think when we first started, when we talked about, what are the ramifications from the DOT if you take the lights down, all along they said, well, we're working on it. And eventually, no matter how quick you take them down, if the DOT finds out down the road, well, hey, this is how much you have to pay, the bill's probably going to come,
Truth is, though, they should know what they're doing here. They don't know. This is obviously a precedent-setting case, and they don't know how to deal with it. Same as Eagle River, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken.
Yep, I think there's something to that. Yep.
So, be a guinea pig in this situation could come back and bite us financially.
So that's an update. Now, you don't have to take any action. Really, there's no action out there to be taken. You asked me to update you with costs. I gave you an update. You can't do one of the options. And in the meantime, I gave you a little bit of info that we found too. You can accept that as an update, or enough for me.
Thank you.
No.
Anything else for finance?
Oh, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on next to Public Works.
I'd like to make a motion to approve agreement with Weyauwega County, including a 50-50 cost share of County Highway F project engineering for a cost to the city of $26,025.
I will second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the agreement with Weyauwega County for 50-50 share cost. Any questions or comments on County Highway F project?
I'll just make a quick comment. This is a project they're doing next year. The county is contracting with Cedar Corp, and we are then supplementing the county's responsibility as part of our share.
Because it comes back into the city?
Yeah, because we're paying for the sections of County F that are on
Yeah.
East Alfred Street essentially, which is all of East Alfred Street from Pine east to the city limits.
Are we doing utilities?
Yes. Yes, we are. Yep, I think actually last month we had the agreement for Cedar Corp to do the
Oh,
utilities there. Yep.
I think we were working with the county on this for several years now.
I want to say at least 2010, 2011 it looked like it came up, and then they potentially delayed it, or
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of an estimate from municipal well and pump to install mag meter and replace piping at well number 4 for a cost of $6,550.
I will second that motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any comments?
I'll make a quick comment. This is part of the well inspection at well number 4. There will be more work next month. But as we went into the pre-construction meeting, we were looking at the existing piping. The piping in the well house has been, I don't know a good word, but it hasn't actually been fixed properly. There's just been one little fix here and then another fix here down the road. As a result, we've got some problems with air pressure, a little bit of leaking. Some of the pipes aren't necessarily straight. But the quote came in from Municipal Well and Pump, who's doing the work on the well inspection. They can install the new meter and also repipe the inside of the well. And it makes sense to do it now because the well's down while they're doing the inspection. You will see another bill or another topic on this project. We approved the well inspection. What happens with that is when they pull the well out and all the pumping equipment, they inspect it, and then if there's problems, any cleaning, replacement, that's what you'll see next month at Public Works. But this is just for the putting piping inside the building. And we do have the money in the budget too.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend proceeding with the repair option 1, Sheridan Place pipe and slip line outfall for the North Mill Street storm sewer repair project.
I will second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded for slip pipe for the North Mill Street storm sewer replacement or repair project. Any questions or comments?
This is for the storm sewer that failed below the Legion building on the Legion property. The state has agreed to pick up about a third of the cost, and they're not going to pay us. They're going to contract with the county to do work in lieu of payment. Option, at this point, the DNR, because we're so close to the lake, and the DOT want you to recommend one of 2 options. This option is to just put a new pipe through the existing line that's there. The other option would be to reroute it on their property, which would be up to $20,000 more expensive because you're digging in the street. This one, I believe, is about $30,000 to $40,000, but we won't get the estimate firmed up until we can get some quotes for the work. Right now, we're just looking for DNR and DOT approval, and to do that, you would have to select option number 1. It's cheaper, uses the existing line, and it's less of a headache on the street there with traffic.
And that's just for storm sewer
Yeah.
drainage?
Yeah, actually that line collects, it's got 2 holes in it. There's a sinkhole that developed behind the Legion Hall.
Right.
This collects all the way up the hill on Mill Street, so it goes all the way up to Clark. Everything that runs off, all the water within about a 1.5 block radius on each side of the street from Mill, all the way down to the Legion. Collects all that water and then runs it to the lake. And because it's on State Highway 110, that's why the state's agreeing to pick up the cost. Collects that water off that state road.
So it's $6,500, that's the half that we're liable for?
Nope, number 3, they're estimating this to be about 40 grand. If we would go with the other options, it's up to about 50-60 because you'd be digging new lines. This one is less intrusive on the property.
Okay.
And of course, they know that it can handle the flow.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of engineering agreement with Cedar Corp for the North Mill Street Storm Sewer Repair Project.
I will second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded for the engineering agreement with Cedar Corp for the North Mill Street Storm Sewer Project. Any questions or comments?
This is to approve the engineering work on this project. To date, they put it under their consultative agreement, which is not supposed to handle projects. So now that we're moving forward, now they're giving me a quote.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of quote from PLC Water Jetting for storm sewer cleaning on East Main Street.
Second motion.
Any questions or comments?
Comment is, PLC is the company that we've gone through with the root cutting, which was very successful. They've also televised our sanitary and storm lines. This is the section of town that had a lot of sand and debris in it, flooded last winter after I had come, just of the winter. We had thought potentially we could save some money, have our own staff do some jetting of the material, contract someone to come in with a vacuum and just suck that out. When we went to get quotes on the vacuuming, all the contractors had told me that the cost to jet themselves and the vacuum is the same. So we're actually going to save our own staff. The recommendation is to go to PLC. They're not the lowest bid. Hyler or Red Septic, I believe, is at $150 an hour. PLC is $195 an hour with a truck charge. PLC has gone in there with their camera. They know exactly what's in there. They know what it'll take to get this done. Hyler or Reds had called when they thought we were just vacuuming, and when I had said, well, we're looking at actually doing the jetting, they had said, yes, we can do that. And it wasn't super convincing, and not that I had made any recommendation based off of that alone, but PLC has done good work, and they know what's in there, and they know to get done. And also, they can come by the end of this week if you approve tonight. So we'll definitely get it done before the winter. And it's estimated about 10 hours.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of Crane Engineering quote for East Street Lift Station check valve replacement for $3,281.73.
I will second the motion.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any questions or comments?
We got two quotes. Crane is the low bidder. Crane, I don't know if you had gotten that deep into the quotes, but Crane only quoted one person, but they're having their state rep or their sales rep come and work and do the work too, and they're not billing us for that, so that's part of why they quoted $3,200. I think LW Allen quoted almost $5,000. That's the reason there.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval to reclassify Paul Weyauwega as a full-time public works utility employee with a $1.58 raise effective October 22nd.
comments?
We'll make a comment. Paul has been our temporary employee since Eric had gone on military leave. You'll remember a couple months ago, you had voted, Paul actually, the terms of his employment were that as soon as Eric came back, he was leaving, and Paul was done. We extended him through the end of the year. It was very good that we extended him, because as soon as Eric came back, we had, one of the other guys had a baby, and he was off of work. So we just got back to a four-man crew, which is something that we had talked about at Public Works. For the 2014 budget, knowing that we had Paul through the end of the year, the utility and the general budget was put together to add the fourth full-time guy back, which we had up until 2011, late 2011. The committee had said, well, Paul was hired at a reduced rate as a temporary employee. He's extended through the end of the year. The intent, if the fourth full-time employee was approved, the intent would be to hire Paul. In the meantime, Paul, knowing that at the end of the year, potentially his job was done, has been looking for other employment. Now, there's some value to, if we're gonna add a full-time employee, we already have one looking for a full-time job that's here, runs things on his own when he needs to. I think last deer hunting, everyone was off except Paul, and everything survived. I think that speaks to Paul's experience and knowledge of our system. The committee had said, well, he's at a reduced rate. If we're looking at making him potentially the full-time employee in January, why not now? And the $1.58 raise does not bring him up in line with the other full-time employees, but it gets him close. And there's a recommendation for the budget to look at the Public Works and Utility pay scale. That won't go into effect until January if you approve it. But this, the $1.58 gets Paul close.
And when would that take effect?
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Patrick.
He appreciates it too.
That's all I have.
Police, fire, and ambulance.
No action for council.
Okay. Public health and relief.
No action for council.
Recreation committee.
No action for council.
All right. And planning commission. There was nothing from the planning commission. New business. We need a motion then to approve the street permit application for the hometown program for October 27th, 2013.
I will make a motion to approve the street use permit application for the hometown program for the 27th of October.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for the permit for the application for hometown program. Any questions or comments?
For trick or treating.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And one abstain. All right, next I need a motion then to approve Fred Gage to the Board of Review.
You gotta do separate because it's two separate appointments.
Okay.
Yep.
We have a motion, do I have a second?
How many people do we have, how many openings do we have on the board of review right now? Is there only one?
Just one. Hey, look, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Mike. Both of these appointments are to fill the seat vacated by Roger Perry. So there's one here, there's one on the zoning board of appeals, which is the next.
And that's in nine.
Yep.
Correct.
Sorry.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
You don't have a second.
cover him. Okay,
Now, how is Fred appointed? Who appoints, who made the appointment?
The mayor, on these appointments, the mayor suggests or nominates, makes a nomination, and then the council has to confirm. You can confirm. If you approve his appointment, it's okay, he gets on. If you would vote either down, because he's singled out on his own and mentioned on the agenda, you can only consider him for that appointment. And he's for both. You have two tonight, and he's for both. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah. I don't know him. First, I've never heard the name, but a long time citizen here. Maybe the rest of you know him.
Milk run, milk,
very, yes,
been here a long
his
time.
dad is part of the one, his father's one of them that got the horse and buggy issue before originally started. Him and some other people that were here. Bob Huffenberg.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to appoint Fred Gage to the Board of Review. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then we need a motion then to appoint Fred Gage to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Move the appointment to the zoning board of appeals.
Who's all on it now?
Sure, yes.
Board of Appeals is.
I don't even know who's on board of review either, Shane.
Board of Appeals, it's Ron Eastman, Don Langman, Dick
Weigel.
Weigel.
And Chuck's on there now too. Chuck Gerlach.
And Chuck Gerlach.
Why is Chuck?
Chuck was the new appointee this term.
Chuck replaced Tom Rick.
Okay, all right. I just realized Tom Merrick, yeah.
Yeah, it's not.
Tom had
it's
moved,
not a-
Tom moved.
a-
Yeah,
That's right, Tom would. Oh, sorry.
It's okay, I got the names on it.
Can we get a second?
These are only candidates.
No. You're not candidates.
No, just Mr. Gage is the candidate for this appointment.
I'll second.
I know Fred and I respect him, but I also know somebody younger that has expressed an interest in this position. And when you look at who's on all of our committees, there isn't anybody that's not retirement age, except for Willie, who's on the Board of Reviews. So I personally would like to see somebody younger on our board. I think we need to start mentoring some younger people. None of us are getting any younger, and we've got nobody coming up behind.
I think I agree with you. Yeah.
I started on the planning commission. Mayor Quimby kind of roped me into it. That's only once in a while.
Yeah.
But if you start on committees they don't meet very often, hopefully then they'll gain an interest and you can bring them on board and get them to run for council so we're not running against ourselves.
So, you already appointed Mr. Gage to the Board of Review. That's a committee that meets at least once every year to do the assessment role or the tax role. Not the tax role, the assessment role. The Zoning Board of Appeals has not met, well, they just met to discuss the St. Peter's Church project, but in the end, they're the ones who decide variances from the zoning code. We have probably 3 or 4 projects that are out there right now people are looking, they're going up the ladder internally with staff on what they can have for a new garage, a fence. The city obviously has a stricter or more strict zoning code than like the town would. And sometimes people that move from the town into the city have a hard time getting around that, and I don't blame them. But they start out, they go to the building inspector, they bring their plans on what they want to build. We have at least 2 garages right now, as proposed, would not fit into the zoning code. And so the next step would be, to me, as the zoning administrator, they look for clarification on the code. I give them the clarification. If they don't agree with the ruling that I give, then they can apply for variance with the zoning board of appeals. And that's what this does. I do not know that they've met very often, but they do meet from time to time. That being said, you did approve the first appointment to the Board of Review. Mr. Gage is the only nominated or nomination you could consider for tonight because his name appears strictly on the agenda. The way this would work, if you vote him up, he would be approved. He could be appointed. If you do not, or vote head down, you had mentioned potentially someone else you know. You can't nominate them tonight. The mayor has to put a nomination out there. You don't really have any flexibility tonight, but that we could hammer that out depending on the vote. Does that make sense?
I have a thought regarding this candidate then about zoning board of appeals, because he owns property that probably would be, his garage would not, fit under our present code, and it kind of would you think that would be a difficult thing for him to rule on, since his own property is an exception to the code at this point in time?
Is that right?
Yeah. So I mean, for that reason too, I think it might be tough to put him on a board where he has to rule on zoning ordinances when his present property is something that wouldn't qualify under.
I will make one more comment. The zoning board of appeals is very judicial. It's an actual hearing. It has legal criteria. It's run fairly similarly to a trial or a court hearing where the appellant has to come in and really prove their case and say, look, the zoning code restricts the use of my property so much that I can't do anything else. So there's not really any room for imagination by people that are on the committee, but it's a pretty solid process that needs to be followed. Now, that doesn't mean that it's too much of a burden that not anyone could come on there, but
I think we're putting Mr. Gage in a very uncomfortable, compromising situation. If what you say, is true, that his garage doesn't comply with code.
Well, I'm sure he got a variance when he built it. I know he did.
How many years ago was that, do you know?
25.
I would prefer not to dwell on that, because if you got a variance, you got a variance. I mean, my only objection was trying to get somebody younger on the board. I'm not, I know it in respect for Eddie, and I'm not gonna, not saying anything against him or anything like that. I don't,
Well, and I can tell you that we can put him under there. I mean, there's 5 guys under, but we still have to find 2 more alternates.
yeah, because
On top of this.
for this one, you need to have 5 people there no matter what. So tonight, you don't have the full city council here. You do need to find 2 more alternate people because you call one of them. That's part of the rigid structure that they have for that committee.
So we need 3 people? And we only have
One
name this time?
appointee, and then 2 alternates in case any 1 or 2 of the others. Because for that one, you actually need all 5 there, and you need 4 people to rule to grant a variance as opposed to just 3, which would be the majority of the 5.
So there will be 2 more names forthcoming? spread out, you know, as many people as possible, so. And if Fred can serve on the board of review, and we get 3 different people for these 3 positions, that would be more people in the loop for future leadership.
Well, if you know people, I'd tell you to have them step forward, because it's hard to find people.
Yeah,
People don't wanna do that.
yeah.
When do they meet? Well, most of the time probably in the daytime. I can't do it.
Mm.
That's why it's,
Mhm.
I don't wanna talk about the retired people, but
Mhm.
that's the only people you can get to do it.
When I went in front as a contractor for a customer a couple of years ago, they were all older and they were all there. And it was usually 30 or something, 3 o'clock, and they were all there.
They don't have to meet in the afternoon, though. They can meet in the evening.
Board of Appeals has always met this time. Anytime after 5 o'clock, all the meetings are usually after 5.
What is it? It's the criteria that they have to be a citizen of the city?
Yep.
Okay.
Is this person you have in mind as well, a citizen of the city?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any more comments? Then I ask, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
No.
These are just the ayes. Just the ayes, and he'll ask for no's.
You could wait your turn.
But since you said that early, it counts as an aye. Sorry, that's the rules.
Opposed?
Nay.
Let's move on to the mayor's report. I have nothing at this time. Administrative report, review the 2014 budget.
Before we do that, I will just give a quick report. We did have the police commission, city council staff training last Thursday night. That was about an hour and a half of fun. We did videotape it. I have made DVDs, so for people that did not make it, we have the DVD. The attorney, Macy, who had helped us out with that, had said that was no problem. He gave me the test blanks, so that we could do the quizzes for anyone new, anyone that wasn't there, anyone that gets appointed to the police commission or the council. The only thing that was a little goofy was the sound was a little low, but it's enough that you can see. So I hope everyone found that to be, and maybe you got more questions like me. There's a couple questions afterwards, but at least we learned some things, which I thought was pretty good.
Are they hard copy DVDs, or can you upload them?
I have it on my computer too, so I've got DVD that you throw in your TV,
So we can like check
or you
them
put it in
off?
the computer, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not one.
No, check them out, perfect. Other than that, I did upload the budget spreadsheet. We'll just look at the general fund budget. I have 8 copies, and if you've received a copy from me, this one is different. I'll hand out a couple here to the audience as well. Let me know if you can see it, or if you can pull it up in your Google Drive, though. I just sent it a while ago. And it is called 2014 Budget Spreadsheet Preliminary, because you will not be voting on the budget tonight, but we will review it. The real adoption and the real action gets taken in November. So this is a quick review. Every committee has gone line by line through this. I promise I won't do that to you guys again, but we will. I've got some highlights here. Let me know if you got it. Got it?
Yep.
It's preliminary, just so you know. Yep.
Your copy back here.
Now, the utility budgets are also almost complete, but because they don't have the same timing as this does with property taxes. At this point, know that anything that is spread across the general fund, which is this, taxes, the water and the sewer, it's all been accounted for in all three of those budgets. I will start with the general government. The 2013 year-to-date is probably fairly close, but because of the software transition, we're still working out some of the, we started the year on the old financial software. Halfway through the year, we kicked over to the new. And we're just working out a couple, because we got a new coding system for our accounts, so not everything, it wasn't like we took an A and put it into the new system and it was still an A. It was some, maybe ABC, you know. So we're working on that, but it's close here. You will notice under general government, council, and mayor, there was the thought, or there was some discussion for this year's budget for 2013. As the council and mayor, you oversee not only the general fund and general expenses, but you also oversee the utilities, water and sewer. There is a change for 2014 in the city council. It's dropping 30%. 15% of your costs will be allocated to the water department, the water utility. 15% will be allocated to the sewer. So 70% is essentially what $7,350 is. There's an offset there because it's only, the water and sewer are technically separate businesses from the general government, and as such you should reflect your true costs to the water and the sewer. The council, 70% is left in the general fund. The mayor, 20% each is put into the water, 20% to the sewer. It's left with 60%. The mayor, that's a smaller line item, so it's not as big of a hit. The percentages I used are very common through other municipalities. These are the same percentages that had been discussed with your last budget. Amy, Bill had talked about it but never put it into play for this budget, so I used their suggestion because it was something that I knew that we would be looking to do. In a way, it's shifting costs to where they're actually being incurred. Administrator's expenses, you'll see that's low. That's my training conferences. I have cut back on those things this year because I can't afford to get away from the office as we're doing a lot of these software things. So I propose to leave that the same. I also propose that will be spent wisely. It's not $3,800 that I have to spend as things come up. In blue, all of the wages have received recommendations. The blue is on my position because tonight in closed session, we will be doing or starting my review for this year. And it's probably appropriate that you then look at what my wage would be. That's why it's in blue. It's yet to be undecided, but for the options that were thrown out by the finance committee, they fit into this amount. Moving on down, you'll see the next orange is the bookkeeper accountant. I do not know, the amount that I threw together is $25,000. That includes money for overtime. I believe when this budgeted figure was put together, $28,000 for 2013. There was some uncertainty with health insurance. I have our worst case scenario for health insurance already in hand. Back when you did this budget, you didn't know, and I think they threw out a 15 to 20% potential increase so that you were covered for this year. This includes the worst case scenario with our health insurance for next year, which is about a 10% increase. Now we're shopping that out. We may get a better deal, but if we don't, we'll take what we have already in hand. Moving down, the next orange is a increase or potential increase in property liability insurance and workman's comp. I believe many of you have heard, certainly at the finance committee, because of our loss history, Continental Western has informed me in the last couple of weeks that we're being dropped from our property liability and workers' comp. We're being non-renewed is probably the better term. We are shopping that around right now. I put in for a 25% increase. I think that's good, but the problem is our workers' comp, our rating has skyrocketed. It's 1.69, which means we're paying 69% more than we normally should if we had a regular workers' comp experience modification rating, is what they call it. So there's money set aside there. We're shopping that out. That should be enough to cover it. The contingency, basically, it's a miscellaneous fund, which I've kept that. I thought that was important to keep that above 20,000. When we had the storm come through, we pulled from that account. We did the cleanup. We did certain things there. I left that the same, about $20,000, $30. Moving on down, then this is deputy clerk for 23,000, where the bookkeeper accountant was potentially budgeted too high for 2013. I'm not sure where the 1993 came in, but the 23,000 is a sufficient number for the wage rate increase recommendation. It also includes all the benefits. So I feel comfortable with that number. That's a little bit of an increase there. And then the interim city administrator, obviously don't have one for 2014. So, total general government, in 2013 it was $257,607. This year it's $243,630. Proposing for 2014, that's a cut of 5.43%. A lot of that is due to moving costs to the utilities. Not all of it, but a lot of it. Moving on down to public safety, the fire department has informed us that we will be getting an increase in our share to them. It's $45,281 this year. They are increasing their assessment to all the municipalities that they service, and they had told me 53,000 sounds like the number. That's a 17% increase. The ambulance service, Gold Cross has taken over. They have promised that they will freeze the rate for the first year. I believe we also got it on the record that they said that we may find a cost savings in the long run. That we'll see, but it's potentially frozen. Well, it's offered to be frozen for next year. For total public safety then, well, I'll go back to the police. The police was $355,771 this year. We have, there's a recommendation for some wage increases, 3%, and then also to get the chief to the 100% rate on his contract. We're proposing a 1% increase in the police. Overall, there's a 2.6% increase in public safety. Fire department's going up. The police department is going up a little bit. Health and social services, there's two changes there. Well, actually, all three of them have changed. The health officer, the payment is $400, and we've budgeted $300. The animal pound, we've had set at $3,000. We've been low on that end. It's been $1,500 to $2,000. I cut that $1,000. And then the code compliance officer was budgeted for this year, but we didn't create that position. We are still going to be talking about that next year, but I think it's appropriate that if you're going to budget money for a position, that you have that position in hand, and then you put it in when you put the budget together. We don't have that right now, so I cut the $2,880 out of the budget. That doesn't mean you can't take that back up. We can find the money if that's what you want to do, but after this year, this was our educational year with the ordinances. Next spring, we can take it up and take a look at what to do from there. So that is a cut. That's a very small portion, health and social services, out of our budget. It's $2,400 for the whole section. Public Works, the main changes here are street laborer. That includes the addition of the fourth full-time person. The full-time employee is going to be split, I believe it's 25% out of Public Works, 50% out of water, and 25% out of sewer. But those positions, that's for 4 full-time people, that's where the increase is of roughly $11,000. Public Works supervisor, there's a big amount there in red. That's, I believe, a mix-up in the conversion, because we do not have a Public Works supervisor, so there is no budget there. Outside engineering, we have paid $6,300 for the consultative agreement for Cedar Corp. Whenever we've had them work on a project, we've actually applied their cost to the project itself. So we've had 10,000 in that area. I'm recommending you cut it to 7,000 because what we're paying for is fairly known upfront, and it's not $10,000. Moving on down the snow and ice removal, I've kept that the same. We are going to lease the tractor, but we're still going to be calling Fox Brothers for a lot of the snow removal. And so until we go through a full winter or a full year, I feel comfortable leaving that the same. Storm sewers, we have a lot of work there. We just talked about contracting with PLC to get a lot of the cleaning done. Our budget has only been $500 for our storm sewers since at least 2011. You'll also notice on the actuals for each year, we haven't spent any money out of our storm sewers. I think that the work that needs to be done is a lot more than $1,000, but we're doing a lot of it right now though. So going forward for next budget, we've doubled the budget, but it's $1,000. I think once we do a lot of the cleaning, once you stay on top of things, it's a lot cheaper moving forward. And then the parking lots, I do believe the $6,000 we have to do a little bit more digging through. I think that's a snow removal that was misapplied. I think what happens was we had Fox Brothers come in a couple times to do parking lots. And we're working with the financial software company to get these fixed. But that I've kept the same. The yard waste site, we've budgeted $6,000 historically. We've got a lot more work we'll be doing there. Our guys will be doing more time there. The tractor lease is coming out of there. So I'm proposing we raise that to $10,000. That's another one where we're doing a lot of the work now, where the ongoing maintenance isn't going to be as expensive as it is right now. So you'll see we already went over the budget, or we went over the $6,000 for sure already, but I feel comfortable with $10,000 for right now. And that is it for total public works. Now that's an increase of 4.52%. When we get to the end, you'll find that the net on the big number is going down for spending. So while I'm saying increase, in the end we'll get to the more friendly number. Leisure activities, this is the rec area. Library, $160,253 is their total budget. Of that, you'll see in the revenues, there's library aid from Washera and Wapaka County. They are paying, it's about $54,000, which is an increase this year. The counties are. So our share is $105,883. I sat in at the library board budget meeting. I feel pretty comfortable with this. And it's a little bit of an increase. I believe this year was about $100,000 at the city. 102, 103, I'll firm that number up, but about $3,000. The next line item is the community center. Now, I'm proposing to leave that in the budget. That's the figure that we pay to the Legion for them to house the senior meals, the senior programming. It sounds like that may not be the long-term answer for them at the Legion. I'm leaving the money in there because even if the senior center moves, at least we still have the money there. It's a lot easier to not spend that money than it is to find it in the budget if you need to spend it. But I think every year there's an agreement that's put together with the Legion, and I haven't seen or heard of that yet. But the money's there if you need it. Moving on down, the swimming pool. This was a year that we did some extra, or Swim Lake, we did some extra work there on concrete repairs. I feel comfortable dropping that budget down to $50,000 because there's a lot of chemical things that we're doing, trying to cut down on the use of chemicals, pump less water, we can cut our costs there. And we were pretty close, right about $50,800, which the goal was to be under 50, and we were close. Other than that, the celebrations and entertainment, there's still the fireworks money in there. The park and playgrounds, that's staying the same at $23,500. That is an increase of 2.52% for leisure activities. Our other general expenses, the changes there, regional planning, tree maintenance, zoning review, TIF, ads, website, that's all staying the same. There are two things here. We started doing the citizen survey this year. It will cost us about $1,200 to keep that going from year to year. I'm putting the money in the budget in the event you want to keep doing that. I think that was our intent. The money's there if we need it. The next thing down is $1,500 for a program that I want to put together, and I'll bring it to finance in November. It would be to train our employees. We send the office staff to the clerk treasurer training. We send water sewer guys to the water sewer operator training. Sometimes we send employees to the leadership alpaca class, which is a different kind of training. But we only send so many because it's during the workday. You can't send your whole staff. This would be a program where people could seek out training, leadership training, communication training on their own. And this would be something of a reimbursement program when they can prove this is how it helps me in my job. Maybe someone without a degree wants to go and get an associate's degree, or has an associate's, wants to do a bachelor's degree. There's some value there to the city. This type of program would be reimbursement. It would also have strings attached. Say if somebody got $200, $300, $400, if they stayed for 2 or 3 years, that would be, then they wouldn't owe the money back. If they got training and then left, then they'd have to pay that back to the city. The money is in there for the program. Like I said, this budget will be approved or adopted in November. This program will be pitched to finance in November. And that's why those two are blue, because they're yet to be decided. The other ones are fairly locked in. Well, they're all locked into the budget balances with everything here that you're seeing. But they're all open to debate for tonight or next month. Down to the capital improvements, that's the money that we set aside and put into the capital improvement fund. We're keeping that at $300,000. The yellow is the year-to-date, how much we've spent this year. Now, that doesn't necessarily match up with how much you put into the fund, because City Hall is in the capital improvement plan. Obviously, you can't finance City Hall in 1 year. The reason this is down at $72,000 is because we had plans for the new restroom storage facility, which was $120,000. You put that in there. That was delayed till next year. But that's not really budget sensitive at all. That's more, we pay for that out of this fund. And we're keeping, if you look back here, in 2011, we put $326 into the fund. The next year, $329. This year, $311. For 2014, I'm keeping it at $300,000. There's a lot more I think we can do with our capital improvement plan, and that's also coming through in November. So we'll get an idea of how much is proposed to be spent next year, as opposed to how much is going into the fund. The only thing left with expenses then is our long-term debt, which is $167,996. That's up 0.3%. Our interest for next year is down out of the general fund, $7,800. That being said, our total general expenses, this is the big number for 2013, $1.759 million, 1.754, so a cut in 0.25%. And that matches up with a cut in a lot of the state aids we're getting. You can only spend as much money as you take in. So, any questions on the expenses? I know that's really exciting. It was just as exciting, maybe even more at every committee. So, again, I don't need any action on this tonight, but it's just for your review. As we talk about wages, those have all been accounted for in the expense budgets, as they're recommended.
Nice job, Patrick, to putting the money where it needs to go.
I-
And critiquing that a lot better.
I appreciate that. I will throw out a disclaimer that we're only almost 10 months through my first year here, and we won't know for sure what the best numbers are until the end of this year. But the problem there is we already have our next budget put together, so hopefully we'll be really good at this time next year. But it's at least a very good guess, because really the budget is a guess in the end. That's the expenses. The revenue will be really, really quick. That's on page 3, general property taxes, the amount we're collecting. The state does not allow you to increase your levy, except for new construction. The 0.63% is new construction value added to the tax base. That's the increase. We will be taking in $749,568, which is what the state allows us to take in. TIF district tax, it's set at $145,000. We actually took in about $147,000 this year, so that we could have some leeway there, but being conservative, $145,000 I think we can work with. Moving on down, special assessments, there is some money there for curb and gutter because as we do the County Highway F East Alfred Street project, we will be doing some curb and gutter installation and some sidewalk there. I do not know how much or how much we will bill for that, but when I do, that will be reflected as revenue here. Intergovernmental revenues, that's where we'll see the cuts. State shared revenue is down a couple $100, so it's $510,966. That's 0.04%. That's fairly the same, which is good. Our expenditure restraint, which is it rewards you for not increasing your spending from year to year. That is down 8%, not because you've spent more money, just because that's how much was allocated as part of the program. State fire dues, that's an in and out. We get paid the $3,400, and then we pay it out to the fire department. So it's really pass-through money. That increased, but it's just to reflect this year we made more than $3,000, and the year before we did too. It's closer to $3,400. State road aid dropped. It was $89,000 this year. It's $80,853. It would have been cut even more, except there's an exemption in there. You cannot lose more than 10%. Kind of like a little bit of a parachute there. You can't lose all that money, and you'll see we lost exactly 10% because we were propped up by that exemption there. The only other thing is the park grant, the urban forestry, which we got this year. That's $2,981. We did not get that, but we will be applying in the future to get some work done at Peterson Park. And you'll see the next orange down is the $54,370. That's the increase I talked about in library aid from the 2 counties. And as far as I'm aware, that's been approved when I talked to Christy. That offsets the city's share. You will see there intergovernmental revenues are propped up a little bit by the increase in the library aid. That's cut $10,000, so that's $10,000 out of our revenues, 1.36%. I'm not proposing any changes with our regulation and compliance revenues, basically because I don't know enough yet on how this year is going to end up. This is the bartender's licenses, liquor licenses. It was $37,115 this year. I'm proposing to keep that the same. The only thing I will look at is the court penalties and costs. That had been coded in our software transfer. Some of it went to police revenue. It's coded correctly. It didn't pop up on our account structure yet in the budget. So no change there. Charges for services, I also believe is staying the same. The key there is swimming pool fees, which is on the top of the very last page. We had an effort to cut our costs this year. Revenue, we didn't change a whole lot on that because this is the gross revenue that we take in, and we hit the budget number of $15,000, which is good. Moving on down to other general revenues, the only change there is I had increased miscellaneous $500. That's where when we sell equipment, we had made the change to our surplus equipment sales. When you sell that, it stays with the department that sold it. We sold about $3,200. There's a $25,000 insurance payment in there that's propping that up for this year's account. We won't have that next year for sure. But we're right about in budget, about $3,500 looks good. Other than that, you will see the big number on the bottom matches up with the expenses, $1.754,753, and again, that's a cut in 0.25%. So that's the general fund. The utility budgets you will see hopefully in November, if not in December. I made the promise that we would get that done before January. I think this year, when I started, they were yet to be completed, and we got them done. But everything that's proposed on, and if you look at your agenda again, I don't need any action on the budget, just that we went through it. There are recommendations on there from the committees. The committees have reviewed wages. They're on the agenda to get them noticed to the public. We're not going to act on those recommendations tonight. They'll be held till November. And we'll go to closed session to talk about them, but for you guys in attendance, we're probably going to adjourn from closed session, so there won't be anything after. But know that those recommendations that are put there with the addition of the fourth full-time employee, they're all accounted for in this budget. And I feel pretty good about where we're at here. Any questions, comments? We'll have another kick at this in November too, so part of it is me just saying, hey, remember we talked about it last month? We'll talk about it again. No other questions? That's all I got from my report.
Thank you.
Yep.
Otherwise, how's it been going?
Busy.
Doing a great
It's
job.
been, it's been going pretty good. It's everything I hoped and dreamed it would be, you know. I like it.
Yeah, you still got that sparkle. Keep it.
Yeah. My 2-year-old,
And
or my
that
son just
new
turned
car
2, so
smell.
we still got the birthday party sparkle, so.
Alright.
We don't need anything on that, on your budget?
No, we don't need anything now, and like I said, those recommendations are out there. That's what we're recommending. We will discuss that tonight, and we will discuss it in November too.
Okay.
I don't see that you go over and above any of those recommendations. So if you cut back, however you change that, you're in the green, or in the black, you're not, we have money for it to do those things. So other than that, maybe before we go to closed session, if you want to set the meeting schedule, because then we can adjourn from closed, Becky can go home, everyone can be on their way.
Okay, right now we have finance scheduled for November 4th at 5:30. Public Works, I believe, should be November 11th at 6:30? Or 6? 6? Okay. Council is the 18th at 6:30. All those are Mondays. Do we need a police, rec, public property, or ordinance?
A rec, yeah,
Rec?
rec for sure. Talk about what we're gonna use our bathroom
Okay. Rich,
facility, if we're gonna do it in there.
we usually have had that on the first Tuesday of the month. Would that work? Which would be November 5th. First, yeah. No, I'm sorry, first Thursday would be November 7th.
Can we do it on a Tuesday?
We can change the
Yeah, but whatever you want.
Okay, let's do it on Tuesday.
Tuesday the 5th?
Yeah.
Are there, if there's elections that day, is that gonna conflict with anybody?
There are no elections
No?
that are this November.
Okay.
Tuesday the
Tuesday
5th?
the 5th.
Yeah, that's fine for me.
Alright, okay. imagine that that would be, well, we'll have to get back to you on that, but October 31st, which I believe is next, is that Thursday?
Thursday.
There's 2 dates. Cedar Corp has the last layout meeting that you had, that work session. There's a lot of ideas thrown around, a lot of scribbling on their maps, or their layout plans. They formalized that into some better notes. They want to meet one more time to get that all squared away with where should the elevator, where should the stairs go. They want to have one more meeting before they take it to the public. So the 31st is the first day that they suggested that works. The next day would be November 5th. The 31st, November 5th would be the rec meeting, but,
Which could,
We could move that.
well, if October 31st doesn't work, it's one or the other.
Yeah.
They would prefer October 31st because then it leaves an extra week in November there,
Okay,
right.
okay,
you know?
that's all right.
So that's the only other thing, maybe 6 PM, about an hour on October 31st. That's the only thing I got out there on that.
So then we'll need one. Possibly in November, depending on what happens to that meeting, right?
Yeah, I think on October, next week, we'll have a better idea what their timeline is, and probably depending on how that meeting goes, next Thursday, next week Thursday.
So wait to set public property until I know on a Thursday.
Yeah,
Okay.
So the city hall meeting, 31st, 6 o'clock, is it gonna be here or at city hall?
probably here. Probably here, because at the last meeting, they came in with their big easels.
Oh, okay.
I don't believe in the ordinance, but I'll do. So,
Okay.
Motion then to go into closed session.
I will make a motion to move into closed session.
Wisconsin statute, consideration of employment, promotion, and compensation of performance evaluation data of city employees is subject to jurisdiction or authority of the council. Reason for closed session is to review wages and performances for the 2014 budget. Council may choose to reconvene in open session at the completion of the closed session in order to take action on items from closed session.
Oh, we won't.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Roll call.
Runner?
Aye. You say aye, sorry.
Did you
Roll
say
call.
my name?
Yep.
Yep,
I didn't
yep, no, that's okay.
Roll call to
Aye.
go into closed session. Allenson?
Aye.
Gunderson?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Edward?
Aye.
All ayes.
Yeah, I'm gonna, we're an hour and a half in.